Good morning. I'm Karen Hayes-Ryan from Project Geospatial, reporting live from GEOINT 2025. I'm here today with the very distinguished Dan Opstal from USGS. Dan has been a regular featured speaker here at GEOINT and for Project Geospatial. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you so much, Karen.
And congratulations on your new assignment.
Appreciate it.
But I do want to talk a little bit about some other work, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I understand you have a really exciting event in where you were before.
Yes, exactly. So I was the Civil Applications Executive Secretary. Still very much involved in the defense IC, the triple junction that we call it, right? Okay. So the defense, intel, and federal civil sectors all working together, right? So I'm now the Landsat Program Coordinator Deputy. So that's a supervisory geographer position working within National Land Imaging. So I'm working for and working alongside with all the professionals dealing with Landsat headquarters and all of those functions. However, immediately prior to that, I was the executive secretary for the CAC. And so in those past 8 years, we've been reaching a culminating point, which is kind of exciting.
Very exciting.
So in October, we have our 50th anniversary, 1975 to 2025.
Wow, that's a great time. I know how important the Civil Applications Committee has been for the GEOINT workforce, GEOINT industry, and most importantly, for the citizens of the United States.
Thank you. Yeah, no, appreciate it. I gave a lightning talk on it today. We're looking forward to the next 50 years, right? All this partnership is a super important element of what we do. Bringing together the commercial, like GEOINT capabilities into the fold has been a crucially important effort. And for this kind of 50th anniversary, we're taking a bit of a look back, right? So we pulled a lot of information, and fortunately, I'll give a shout out to the George Washington University National Security Archive. They have all this great information, primary source materials online, that you can find the reports from the original era of civil applications.
Wow, that is exciting.
I'm talking reports signed by Henry Kissinger, like all of these key luminaries in sort of those fields, right, that sign these documents. And it was even something that there was the infamous Church Committee. I'm a student of history, so you look at the Church Committee, mostly not so great stuff came out about the intel community and the Church Committee, right? So the Church Committee had a footnote in there somewhere, and that was a positive note about how the civil applications of remote sensing, that was the kind of thing they wanted to see, and said that's a positive aspect of using these things.
Right.
And what's amazing about the transition from 1975 to 2025 is, even though the technology has evolved, the use cases are still so much relevant to disaster response, natural resource management, and kind of looking at how remote sensing can answer problems. To give you an example, one of the first case studies was a pipeline analysis project up in Alaska. Remote sensing, photo reconnaissance, a great tool for that, because we still, to this day, is not easy to get out into these kind of upper reaches of Alaska. It's still very much a logistical challenge. And so that's one part of it, managing our resources, kind of making sure that we have those components effectively set up. The other one is oversight. So back in years ago, and I gave a talk on privacy in the metaverse a couple of GEOINTs ago, and so we had a case study that you can find, again, in a footnote in one of these primary source materials about moonshine operations. And there was actually a story about how, I think it was the predecessor to the ATF, it might have been the ATF, the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Organization. And so they were looking for kind of these entities that were out somewhere building moonshine, right? I'm not going to make a judgment call on what that's all about, but that's what they were doing. And there was a group at the CAC that said, actually, I think we need to be very considerate over here. Why are we using these remote sensing resources? Isn't there a consideration here for their civil liberties and privacy factors? This is a defense resource. And so the oversight piece to this day continues on that same vein. We have to consider the whole package of the resources being used in civil applications, because if we leverage the defense and intel sector, we still have oversight. And so those considerations persist to this day. So the evolution of 75 to 25 from those perspectives is somewhat the same, even though the technology has evolved into
exponentially.
Oh my gosh, it's a logarithmic scale, right? I mean, now AI, the data from,
Right.
all of these different platforms, moving from light tables to global enhanced GEOINT delivery pro. I think that's what, anyway, that's what it's
Interesting, because we think of the technology on the firearms piece and other things. You look at that and think, okay, that has improved not just on our end for our ability for detection,
Right.
but also on their end. For
Right,
the
of
ability to
course,
hide.
yeah.
I'm not sure that would pertain to the bootleggers and
No,
on the alcohol.
That's right. Yeah, but so I mean, there's unfortunately lots of things happen in parkland and in other places domestically, and so we still have that mission of being sort of that conduit, right, to leverage this data for appropriate federal civil uses, and that's always in all of our literature. There's lots of ways that we need to make sure we take appropriate precautions before that data gets out
Right.
there, right? So even if it's commercial, because it's all licensed under defense auspices.
Okay.
So, but we're so thankful to this community for that. It's a really big deal.
It is a big deal.
So, yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your new assignment and your
Yeah.
promotion into
Thanks.
the Landsat arena.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, Landsat's an exciting time. We're getting ready to look at the evolution of sort of 8 and 9 in the spotlight, right? So Landsat 7 is pacifying soon, and we're going to have see the end of an era there. And gosh, that's an incredible journey.
We have one anniversary and
Yeah,
the end of
and
something
the
all
end of
coming
another,
up.
right? Yeah. So it's like its predecessors 4 and 5 will be out there as a piece of space debris. But what a legacy, right? To be able to contribute to our almost 50 years of archive data and all of the information that has been taken from first light to in the 90s to now, to having been considered as part of the NASA OSAM program, and then that didn't come to fruition, but the consideration, it was really interesting to kind of see and look at the possibilities of an actual space refueling activity, which I know is something that is being considered by a lot in this sector. So yeah.
So do you see the ability, though, for some of those older platforms and the data that they've provided us, is there new technology that we've developed across this geospatial spectrum that will help get more information out of that older Landsat data?
Yeah, I think that's the power of the archive and repeatable, consistent, measurable data sets, right? So there's that baseline of data, and that allows us to be ingested in all of these kind of S3 buckets and all the power of that you see with Amazon and other capabilities. So I think there's a great amount of capability in that. I mean, you're seeing it in Google Earth Engine, you're seeing it sort of in the planetary computer, and one of the fun parts is one of my counterparts, he's doing this great thing on LinkedIn. I like LinkedIn, it's fun to watch, but he is working and doing a national land cover database, 100 days of applications.
Oh.
So it's actually really fun.
Yeah,
to watch. I think he's on day 35 or 36 or something.
That is exciting.
Yeah. So it's all these different applications. He went on ChatGPT and he asked it, this is one of our scientists, said, look, what are all these different land cover applications? And he's looking at everything from soil moisture to vegetation analyses, and these things have so much to do. You can watch the evolution of entire urban areas, right? With this kind of repeatable measurement, same time, sun-synchronous. And so in understanding that kind of transition space, right? Kind of what happened to this urban area? It grew into this, metropolis. What's happening in these different vegetation spaces, and how that influences agriculture, and there's these wonderful stories that we have from the Landsat history, where we're going through not just at the energy piece, right? That's a big part of it. We worked with Chevron in the early days of the program. Now to evolution into agriculture, into the Gallo winery, right? I'm not kidding. I'm not making this up. It's great.
It is funny. You don't think about some of those things, but it is absolutely
monitoring agriculture, seeing the evolution of the company, kind of leveraging that agricultural data. I spoke with some folks here from St. Louis University, and one of them was involved in the GrapeX project. I give a shout out to NASA for this.
Cool.
In addition to our survey scientists, obviously so many interagency partners that we get to work with, and that was looking at these exact soil states that have to exist. And remote sensing is so powerful for that, right? To understand giant areas, right? And be able to look at the evolution of, I talked about the pipeline thing back in the days. the problem sets are not necessarily new, but they are evolving. And so I
Right.
think that's the exciting part about this business and national land cover. And so as I watch these presentations on LinkedIn, whenever he gets close to day 100, I'm going to have to ask him, all right, what's next? Because this has been so great to see all of this land cover data analysis.
Yeah, could you share so that others could maybe follow this
Sure.
path on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Can you share this person's name?
Yeah, Dr. Terry Soul. So
Okay.
he's doing great stuff on
And
LinkedIn.
is he open to letting other people follow him?
You have to reach out to him, but it's the Earth Resources and Observation Science Center, and a shout out to my colleagues there. They are doing just amazing work.
Okay,
And
excellent.
It's so exciting to see the science that comes out of organizations like that.
That would be great.
And it really does cross the gamut. They also work on things like wildland fire and looking at like pre and post conditions for like burned area extent. And it may not be somewhat cool topic of tracking the wildfire, which is of course devastating to so many people, don't get me wrong, but the aspect of like seeing the pre and post and understanding extent and understanding where we may have those before. Actually, I watched a YouTube video with Rhonda recently about, she talked about the good fires and the bad fires.
Right.
It's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Right.
And it's amazing to kind of look at where we can figure out extent, next generation challenges, like these satellites that are coming up. It is really important that we have capability here. These disasters are, the cost is incredible, and so if we can mitigate some of those issues, that's a really
mitigate
great
the issues, mitigate the impact
Exactly.
of some of these things. It is important to track a lot of that. So before we wrap up, you mentioned your new title, but what does it mean for you? What is this? Where are you going next? How
What am I doing with all this
What
stuff?
are you
Yeah,
doing
what am I
every day?
doing? So I am working sort of with the headquarters staff now at National Land Imaging. So program coordinators fund different science centers, and so we fund a great deal of activities, and that activity ranges from the aforementioned projects within science centers like land cover and those types of analyses, all the way to some of the work which I actually talked about the last time I gave a talk, which was there is an office for the USGS out in Flagstaff, and they do reciprocal work for NASA. And their work they actually taught the Apollo satellites how to analyze like regolith and like Earth, or moon dust, if you will, moon
so
geology,
cool.
right?
That is
Lunar
really...
geology. So we fund a little bit of that function as well. And so the last time I came through, because one of my colleagues was so excited about 27, 28, and 29 are going to be the year of the asteroids, because we've got close approach asteroids, and so there's this huge interagency discussion on
outside of that small arena, because I think it's something that
it's a big deal. It's going to start becoming a bigger deal.
Yeah, I think this is something the public really needs to know, be prepared for, think about, talk about.
Yeah, so
not just from a fear factor, but from an exciting factor.
It is. So I will say this: NASA has tremendous websites on these topics. Yeah, but the one in 29 is called Apophis. That one made the news because that's like the Egyptian god of like chaos and darkness or something. But the idea there is that we're tracking these. We're not alone in this. We're existing in this cosmos of and this enterprise of space. And so. It's important for us to understand all of the different finite parts of that. So, but anyway, so I'm in the leadership realm. Back to the original question, and it's just a joy and a pleasure to stay connected to this community, and I hope to do so going forward.
Well, we'd certainly love having you here as part of Project Geospatial's media coverage, but it's also good to just always talk to you. I worked with you before when I was at NGA, and I'm excited to keep working for you now that I'm in the industry role.
Terrific.
Thank you. This is Karen Hayes Ryan reporting from Project Geospatial at GEOINT 2025.